Let me kick off this third session with a quote. And this is by Michael Horton. He says, and I believe what is an excerpt from page 62 of the book Christless Christianity, he says the following: where we land on these issues, that is of the gospel, is perhaps the most significant factor in how we approach our own faith and practice and communicate it to the world. If not only the unregenerate, but the regenerate are always dependent at every moment on the free grace of God disclosed in the gospel, then nothing can raise those who are spiritually dead or continually give life to Christ's flock but the Spirit working through the gospel. When this happens, i.e., let me insert, when this happens, what's this? When somebody gets saved or continues to have spiritual life as believers, not just once, but every time we encounter the gospel afresh, the Spirit progressively transforms us into Christ's image. Start with Christ, that is the gospel. That's his statement in parentheses. And you get sanctification in the bargain. Begin with Christ, but I'll make a reference back to his own parenthesis. Begin with Christ, that is the gospel, and move on to something else, and you lose both. Both what? Justification and sanctification. I again ask, how can these guys get away with saying these things in broad daylight? Does that quote not summarize the points that I have made? He uses the word lose, not me. Okay? He's saying that the way a Christian grows spiritually is no different than what an unbeliever needs to start with. He says whether a person's saved or is growing, it's all in gospel. He's saying these things, not me. Do you remember, and this isn't in my notes, I'm going to read this again quickly. And this isn't in my notes. I'm just going to insert this in, and maybe you can make the connection. But he said, where we land on these things is perhaps the most significant factor in how we approach our own faith and practice and communicate it to the world. If not only the unregenerate, but the regenerate are always dependent at every moment on the free grace of God disclosed in the gospel, then nothing can raise those who are spiritually dead or continually give life to Christ's flock, but the Spirit working through the gospel. When this happens, not just once, but every time we encounter the gospel afresh, the Spirit progressively transforms us into Christ's image. Start with Christ, that is the gospel, and you get sanctification in the bargain. Begin with Christ and move on to something else, and you lose both. Okay, this is the John Calvin Institutes of the Christian Religion, translated by Henry Beveridge, I believe, B-E-V-E-R-I-D-G-E. and I refer you to page 509. Okay? Towards the bottom, here's what Calvin says. He says, therefore, we must have this blessedness not once only. What's he talking about? In context, it's salvation. Therefore, we must have this blessedness not once only, but must hold it fast during the whole of our lives. Okay? A little bit of an issue there of holding our salvation fast. All right, but not much. He continues, moreover, the message of free reconciliation with God is not promulgated for 1 or 2 days, but is declared to be perpetual in the church. He's saying reconciliation is perpetual. What's reconciliation? Reconciliation is justification. Right? He's saying right here, John Calvin, that justification is perpetual. Really? Progressive justification? Now, this concept in Reformed theology is referred to as progressive sanctification, when really what they mean is progressive justification. Well, Paul, then why do they call it progressive sanctification? Are you saying they're deceptive? Well, yes, I am saying they're deceptive, but let me be nicer about it. They're saying it's progressive sanctification because they see the two as being the same thing, right? Okay? So they're really not lying. It's a lie, but they're not lying. Maybe the only place in human activity where lying but not lying is possible. But they can call it, again, they can call it progressive sanctification because they believe the two are saying. Do I believe that when they use the term progressive sanctification, do I think they know that a lot of evangelicals think they're talking about the more traditional gospel chart where the chain is broken and discipleship is separate from justification? Yes, I think they know that. So anyway, we have Calvin here saying that justification is progressive or perpetual. So it's progressive justification, which if you've gone to Bible college or seminary, the term progressive justification would certainly raise some eyebrows and some red flags real quick, which they call progressive sanctification because they see the two as being the same. I continue. Hence, Calvin continues, believers have not even to the end of life any other righteousness that which is there described. That is the righteousness of Christ. So in order for us to continue to have that righteousness, justification must be perpetual. You beginning to see the problem here? He continues, Christ ever remains a mediator to reconcile the Father to us. And there is a perpetual efficiency in His death. That's progressive imputation. That's progressive imputation of Christ's righteousness to remain just before God. Okay? Abulation, satisfaction, experiation, in short, perfect obedience, by which all our iniquities are covered. That is, by the perfect obedience of Christ. So what he's saying here is that reconciliation in perfect obedience is perpetually imputed to us throughout sanctification. That's why these guys can say, speak of the total depravity. They don't say total depravity of the saints, but that's what it is. That's how we can be totally depraved and still saved. If we allow Christ or live a certain formula where Christ obeys for us. If we obey on our own, we're messing up the links to the chain. He continues, in the epistle to the Ephesians, Paul says not that the beginning of salvation is of grace, but by grace ye are saved, not of works, lest any man should boast. So there Calvin uses a justification verse in context of sanctification, which is standard New Calvinist MO. Okay, all the time.